Welcome to the Short Funk Podcast. I'm Tom Barbalet. I wanted to take a minute to talk really seriously associated with safety and the nature of these podcasts. I received an email from Connor Seitz-Bowen. I kind of get periodic emails from listeners with general concerns associated with the nature of my own personal safety and also some of the topics that I explore. But I wanted to talk to this specifically because certainly, and very intentionally on my part, I need to add, a number of the topics in recent Short Funks have been somewhat dark explorations, particularly associated with certain elements of my psychology. I'm very well aware of the circumstances that I am in on a number of levels, but in particular associated with the work situation that I've been in over recent months. And the fact that I don't narrate strategies that I'm using associated with this is more indicative of the fact that this is a public podcast, not that I'm not developing these strategies and taking these ideas, these influences, these impacts on very strongly. The critical work-life balance and the analysis of the work-life balance has been a choice that I've made a number of times in my life and career. And I'm certainly very mindful that some of the dark and I don't know what one would call them, some of the darker explorations that I put out in Short Funk may be indicative to people, particularly sensitive and mindful people like Connor Seitz-Bowen, Alistair Paul, a variety of other folk who've contacted me, of things that might indicate a variety of things which are not the case. And I think my interest in Short Funk is actually to try and push these boundaries, to try a recording style which is very intimate, very direct, very concise, and also something that provides a degree of information, a degree of critical thought to a variety of listeners. I feel it's on the cusp of irresponsibility to actually do some of the podcasts that I put out through Short Funk, and I'm very mindful that a lot of this content, particularly speaking to people that might have issues, mental health issues, in particular suicide issues, quite fundamentally, it may be too extreme for these kind of listeners. And I think what I found through podcasts in general is that people tend to self-censor what they listen to very directly. Although there are curious counterexamples, my sense is that if a topic is not to someone's liking, they will typically stop the podcast, or they will take a degree of responsibility associated with listening to the podcast and the choices that they make around this. My choice to put some of the darker topics out there is more to say that these ideas exist. And rather than sugarcoating these ideas, I want to put them out to an audience that I think is very mature and very intellectually attuned with a lot of the stuff that I put out there. Now, it might seem to a certain extent to be irresponsible, particularly to use my own voice for some of these ideas. But I think what I'm trying to do through Short Funk is really move past that process, that degree of censorship, and put out ideas that I think are worthy of consideration. Now, with regards to my personal life, my professional life, there are large aspects of my life that I don't put out in podcast form. I have a very well-defined idea of who I exist as in podcasts and who I exist as in actuality. The actual version of me is considerably more complex, considerably more, I don't know, almost insect-like survival instinct. So a lot of the topics that I put out in Short Funk, particularly associated with dreams and kind of dark remembrances, and we haven't really talked in any degree, any length of detail associated with a lot of the interesting dream explorations that I've had this year. I put some of those out in Stone Ape because I think they're actually better served in a discussion rather than a narrative. Now, Stone Ape is no longer a vehicle for me to put these ideas out. I don't know how I would translate some of them back to Short Funk, but I'm working on it. What you need to appreciate here is, aside from, dying of a heart attack or something like that, I have a lot of really strong survival instincts that constantly counterbalance a lot of the darker stuff that I talk about in Short Funk. And honestly, I feel I have a responsibility to my listeners, particularly when certain concerns are raised, that I need to state this stuff explicitly and make it perfectly clear to folks that what I say here is almost a performance art thing. Clearly, a portion of it does represent something, but the economic means I have, the access to capital that could change circumstances, the ability that I have to travel internationally and do a variety of things, there are various escape routes and various things that are open to me. It's not hopeless. I'm not homeless. I'm not starving. I'm not in a circumstance where there is literally walls of calamity coming towards me. And I'm also very mindful, I'm going to talk about this in other Short Funk recordings, but I'm very mindful of the responsibility that I have in putting this audio out. So I wanted to just say, as a caveat to a lot of the deeper, more depressing or introspective short funks that are coming out currently, listeners do not need to be concerned about me in any meaningful, fundamental sense. I think what interests me more is doing it as a kind of, exploration for these kind of emotions, these kind of ideas, and really providing them to people so they can reflect themselves on certain aspects of their own background and past and what have you, and use it as a means of productive resolution or at least productive exploration. Tom Barbalet in San Jose, signing out.